And all eyes on New York as President Biden is raising funds in the Democratic stronghold as former President Trump is attending the funeral of a fallen NYPD officer. Joining us now live is NTD's White House correspondent Iris Tao, who's on the ground in New York City. Good evening, Iris. If you could, tell us about Biden's fundraiser there today.
Good evening to you, Steve. So tonight, in just a few hours, President Biden will be campaigning right behind us at Radio City Music Hall in Manhattan. He's teaming up with former Presidents Barack Obama and Bill Clinton. And this fundraiser, his campaign says, will be one of the most lucrative and successful ones in history. He's expecting to raise about $225 million just for this one event tonight. And meanwhile, there are about 5,000 guests who are invited and will be attending this campaign event tonight. They're playing anywhere from $200 to $500,000. Some getting a picture opportunity with these three presidents. And this fundraiser, likely one of the most lucrative ones for Democrats in history, comes as Biden is seeking to demonstrate his widening cash edge over Trump. It also comes as Biden is increasingly relying on former President Obama to boost his 2024 campaign. Obama just visited the White House last week. Meanwhile, Obama is reportedly expressing concerns that Biden could lose to Trump in 2024 and has been giving his own advice to the White House, including White House aides close to Biden himself. Meanwhile, former President Trump is also trying to raise money off this Biden campaign event here in New York today, sending out several emails warning that Obama is back. And right now, outside of this music hall here, we are seeing a lot of some pro-Palestinian protesters here chanting from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, as they're demonstrating and protesting to President Biden over his handling of the war in Gaza. Steve.
Iris, it's certainly not too often that you have 4 presidents in one city, let alone 3 of them in the building right behind you. Naturally, the police presence is going to be as it is. We can see them right there behind you. Tell us about former President Trump's visit, who's also in New York City as we speak. Why is he there?
Right, so former President Trump was in Long Island, New York earlier this afternoon as he was invited to attend the wake of a slain NYPD officer whose name is Jonathan Dillon. He was killed on Monday during a traffic stop by someone who has a lengthy criminal record. Here's what President Trump was saying outside of that funeral service, calling for more law and order. Watch.
We have to get back to law and order. We have to do a lot of things differently because this is not working. This is happening too often.
And the White House says that President Biden also spoke with New York City Mayor Adams today, offering his condolences to the tragic incident. Steve.
NTV's Iris Tao with that live report outside of Radio City Music Hall in New York City. Thank you, Iris. In Georgia, Judge Scott McAfee today questioning a Trump attorney who argued that the RICO case should be dismissed. He says that allegations against Trump related to political speech are protected by the First Amendment. The judge asking whether speech should be a crime. We turn now to our legal correspondent, Arlene Richards, for more. Good evening, Arlene. What was Trump's attorney arguing today?
Well, he's essentially saying that all of the activities that he's been charged with in the indictment were part of political speech, and they were part of statements that he made while he was a presidential candidate, and therefore they're protected by the Constitution. He said this includes conversations with Brad Raffensperger, as well as statements he made about the election being stolen. They say that he could have said anything he wanted about that election because he was a presidential candidate, even if what he said was false. So I think Judge McAfee may be a little skeptical about that. Let's watch the clip.
And your argument is that this is core political speech.
Correct.
So some crimes can be achieved solely through speech, though. Terroristic threats, solicitation. Why is that not what's happening here, as alleged?
So Judge McAfee actually denied 2 similar motions filed by Sidney Powell and Ken Chesebro before they pled out of the case. And at that time, he said that there wasn't enough evidence for him to make a determination and that this motion had to be decided at the trial. So I think he will probably give a similar answer or ruling in this motion as well.
NTD's Arlene Richards with an update. Thank you so much, Arlene. And Justice Department officials say they've charged 20 people with threatening election workers in the last 2 elections. DOJ referring to the suspects as, quote, election denialists. Will these prosecutions have a chilling effect on Americans' right to freely express their concerns over possible election interference? Joining me now to discuss the election and election integrity and the subject of his new book is former Georgia Congressman Jody Hice. Former Congressman Jody Hice, thank you so much for joining.
Great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you here, Congressman Hice. Let's start with NBC's decision to drop former RNC Chair Ronna McDaniel as a news contributor after several on-air hosts protesting her hiring. MSNBC host Rachel Maddow likened McDaniel's position as a news analyst to a mobster working at a DA's office. What is the basis for these criminal characterizations of McDaniel?
Well, it all comes down to the cancel culture. NBC is exhibiting really the cancer, if you will, of the cancel culture. These people, look, they've got plenty of people at NBC who have been involved in government in the past. They have credentials where they have come from, and yet it's okay for them. But you let a conservative or a conservative-leaning individual come to potentially apply for a job, and no, that's not acceptable. That's dangerous. That's a threat to democracy. This is cancel culture at its worst. And they will go back. Listen, these people do not want your voice or my voice to be heard. They do not want a conservative voice to be spoken in the public square, and they will do everything they can to stop it.
Now, Justice Department officials have said about 20 people have been charged with threatening election workers in the last two elections, blaming election denialism as the root cause of many of its cases. More than half a dozen of those charged have been sentenced to 1 to 3.5 years in prison. Do these cases of actual threats against election officials have a chilling effect on Americans' free speech about their concerns of election interference and election integrity?
Well, of course it does. I mean, look, there is nothing illegal or criminal about questioning an election. Now, of course, people can cross that line. They can be involved in threats. They can be involved in criminal activity. And of course, that's a crossing of the line that should never take place. But to just simply question the outcome of an election and want transparency in the election results, there's nothing wrong with that. We have a whole history of Democrats who have done that over multiple election cycles. I mean, probably in the last 20 years, every Republican has been elected as president. Democrats have challenged the certification outcomes of those. Everyone from Hillary Clinton to Maxine Waters to Nancy Pelosi, Jamie Raskin. I mean, we can go down a list who have, in fact, Rasmussen just recently did a poll where 57% of Democrats right now are willing to decertify the presidential outcome in 2024 if President Trump wins. And here we haven't even had an election and they're threatening not to certify.
And this leads me to my next question, which is on the topic of your new book titled Sacred Trust, Election Integrity and the Will of the People. You wrote about how you witnessed the gradual erosion of congressional integrity and how it has crippled America's faith in most essential institutions, to quote your own words there, and you called for solutions. Talk to us about some of your experiences in Congress that led you to write this book and what solutions might be out there.
We started noticing right around the COVID period of time that there was an outcry coming from the left on the need to federalize elections. And of course, our founders didn't want that. They didn't federalize this from the very beginning because they did not want the potential corruption coming from a centralized location in the country. So they spread it across to the multiple states, and that's in our Constitution. But while I started seeing outcries for H.R. 1 and some of these other things that the Democrats were pushing, and they used COVID as an excuse. If people are going to be scared to go vote, they're not going to be able to get out of their homes, so we need to send ballots to them, and we need to make all these types of changes, which many states began to do. And of course, that resulted in a lot of problems in the election and the outcome in multiple states. And I was kind of on the front line of being outspoken against some of that. Certainly, I was outspoken as it relates to Georgia and in fact challenged the results from Georgia's elections. When it comes to a democracy, a democratic republic like we have, there is perhaps no greater issue than election integrity.
Former Congressman Jody Hice, really appreciate you joining us. Thank you.
Great to be with you. Thanks.
And the Biden administration today announcing new policy aimed at regulating the government's use of artificial intelligence, AI. Vice President Kamala Harris said the goal is to, quote, promote the safe, secure, and responsible use of AI. The policy was put together by the Office of Management and Budget. Under it, agencies must verify that the technologies that they use don't harm the rights or safety of Americans. The regulations require government agencies to publish a list of their AI systems and their associated risks, as well as how to manage those risks. Each federal agency will also need to appoint a chief AI officer to oversee the use of this technology. Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.